My sister banned me from her royal wedding to impress her rich in-laws, but she forgot one detail. I own the venue, and I'm about to cancel her entire life. My name is Cassia Thorne. For 26 years, I was the ghost of the family. My younger sister, Brielle, was the golden child, the one my mother, Elena, poured every cent and every ounce of affection into. Brielle was beautiful, popular, and a pathological liar. I was the sensible one, the one who worked 3 jobs to put myself through business school, while Brielle used our late father's life insurance to buy designer handbags and find herself in Europe. Our father, Silas, was a self-made real estate developer who died when I was 19. He knew Elena was an enabler, and Brielle was a black hole for money. In his final months, he sat me down and did something that would set this entire tragedy in motion. He moved the bulk of his commercial holdings into a private trust that only I could access when I turned 25. Elena and Brielle got the house and a generous monthly stipend, but I got the keys to the kingdom. I never told them. I knew if they found out, the emotional blackmail would never end. Instead, I let them think I was a mid-level consultant while I quietly grew the Thorne Group into a hospitality empire. Fast forward to 6 months ago. Brielle landed the big one. She started dating Julian Sterling, the heir to a massive banking fortune. Julian's family is old money, stiff, judgmental, and obsessed with status. Naturally, Brielle started crafting a new persona. She told the Sterlings we were descendants of European royalty and that I, the shameful older sister, lived in a halfway house due to a delicate mental state. The wedding was planned for the Aurelian Plaza, the most expensive, exclusive convention center in the Pacific Northwest. It's a place where the waiting list is 3 years long and the deposit alone costs more than a luxury car. I found out about the wedding through an Instagram post. I wasn't tagged. In fact, Brielle had blocked me. I drove to our mother's house to confront them. Elena was in the kitchen, obsessively polishing a silver tea set that Brielle probably stole from an antique shop. "Mom, what is this?" I asked, holding up a screenshot of the digital invitation. "The Aurelian on the 14th? Elena didn't even look up. "Oh, Cassia, we discussed this. Brielle needs this to go perfectly. Julian's parents are very traditional. They wouldn't understand your lifestyle." "My lifestyle? You mean having a job?" "Supporting myself? You're so bitter," Elena sighed, finally looking at me with that cold, dismissive gaze. "Brielle is marrying a Sterling. This elevates the whole family. If you show up with your office worker energy and your cheap suits, you'll ruin her chances. She's told them you're away at a private sanitarium in Switzerland. It's for the best. We'll send you pictures. You're banning me from my only sister's wedding so she can play pretend?" "It's not a ban, Cassia," Brielle's voice drifted from the hallway. She walked in wearing a $15,000 silk robe I knew Mom couldn't afford. "It's a strategic absence. Besides, you couldn't even afford the valet tip at the Aurelian. Just stay in your little apartment and be happy for me for once." I looked at them, my mother, the enabler who had sold my existence for a seat at a rich man's table, and my sister, the monster who thought she could erase me. "Fine," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I won't be at the wedding as your guest." "Good," Brielle smirked. "I knew you'd understand. Now we have a tasting at the Aurelian this afternoon. Don't call us." I walked out of that house and sat in my car, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in a while. "This is Cassia Thorne," I said when the voice answered. "I need to speak with Marcus, the general manager of the Aurelian Plaza. Tell him the owner of the Thorne Trust is coming for a site inspection. And tell the catering department to cancel the Sterling Thorne tasting for this afternoon. We're changing the locks." The first twist, the Aurelian wasn't just a venue I owned. It was my father's favorite project, the one he finished just before he died. He named the grand ballroom the Sila's Room. Brielle and Elena were so busy social climbing, they never bothered to check the corporate registration of the place they were so desperate to get into. I wasn't just going to skip the wedding. I was going to be the one who pulled the rug out from under the entire royal masquerade. But as I drove toward the Aurelian, I received an anonymous text message that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of my father's original will, the one I thought had been destroyed. And it showed that Brielle wasn't just being mean. She was hiding a secret that could put me in prison for life. The Aurelian Plaza looked different when you were there to dismantle a dream. Usually I saw it as a triumph of marble and glass, a monument to my father's legacy. Today, it felt like a trap. I pulled my car into the executive garage, bypassing the valet line where I saw a familiar sight, Julian Sterling's vintage silver convertible. They were already here for the tasting. I didn't enter through the grand foyer. I took the service elevator to the manager's office on the mezzanine. Marcus, the GM, was waiting for me. He was a tall, polished man who had worked for my father for 15 years. He looked like he'd seen a ghost when I walked in. "Miss Thorne," he said, standing up immediately, "I received your message. I've already instructed the kitchen to hold the sterling tasting, but your mother and sister are in the Sela's room. They brought the sterling parents. It's a full dress rehearsal for the seating chart." "Who did they tell you I was, Marcus?" I asked, looking at the security monitors. Marcus looked uncomfortable. "They didn't. Mrs. Thorne told the events coordinator that the owner was a distant relative who lived in Singapore and gave her power of attorney to manage the wedding details. She even produced a document, Cassia, a notarized letter with your signature." The second twist slammed into place. My mother hadn't just enabled Brielle, she had committed full-scale identity theft. That letter was the secret hinted at in the text message. They were using my name to bypass the Aurelian's strict vetting process because, on paper, I was the one hosting the wedding for my beloved sister. "Give me a staff uniform," I said, my voice cold. "A server's jacket and a mask. I want to hear what they're saying when they think the help is invisible." 5 minutes later, I was pushing a cart of crystal water carafes into the Sela's room. The ballroom was breathtaking. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, hitting the gold leaf molding. At the center table sat the power players. Julian Sterling was handsome in a generic Ivy League way. His parents, Alastair and Beatrice Sterling, looked like they had been carved out of granite. And there was Brielle, laughing like a bell, her hand resting on Julian's arm. "It's just so tragic about Cassia," Brielle was saying, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "We tried to have her here, truly. But the doctors at the Swiss clinic said the excitement would trigger her episodes. She's obsessed with Julian, you see. She's been stalking us for months." Beatrice Sterling sighed, a sound like dry leaves. "It's a mercy she's being cared for. One wouldn't want that kind of instability in the family line. It's a shame your father didn't leave her more than a small allowance. It must be hard for you, Brielle, carrying the weight of the family fortune alone." I poured the water, my hand steady despite the fire in my veins. My sister nodded solemnly. "It is. But father knew I was the only one who could handle the responsibility of the Thorne Trust. Cassia would have gambled it away in weeks." I moved to the buffet line to adjust the silver. My mother, Elena, was standing nearby, whispering to a wedding planner. "Make sure the invoices for the floral arrangements are sent to the trust's office," Elena was saying. "Address them to Cassia Thorne. I'll sign off on them tonight. And tell the security team that if a woman matching this description," she held up a photo of me from 5 years ago, "appears anywhere near the property, she's to be detained and removed immediately. She's dangerous." I almost dropped the carafe. They weren't just erasing me, they were setting me up. By using my name to pay for the wedding, they were effectively stealing millions from the trust. If I tried to stop them now, they could claim I was the one who authorized everything and then lost my mind, just like the story they told the Sterlings. "Excuse me, server," Beatrice Sterling called out. I walked over, keeping my head down, the mask covering half my face. "This water is tepid," she snapped. "And tell your manager that the owner of this venue, this Cassia Thorne relative, needs to be present at the rehearsal dinner. My husband wants to discuss a permanent membership. It's quite rude of her to stay in Singapore while we're spending this much money." I felt Brielle stiffen beside her. "Oh, Beatrice, she's very reclusive. She hates crowds." "Well," Alastair Sterling interjected, his voice booming, "money talks, doesn't it? If she wants our banking firm to handle the trust's portfolios, she'll show up. Otherwise, we might have to reconsider this alliance." Brielle's smile faltered. I could see the panic in her eyes. She had built a mountain of lies, and the Sterlings were demanding to meet the foundation. I stepped back, my mind racing. I could reveal myself right then. I could take off the mask and tell the Sterlings that the madwoman was standing right in front of them and that she owned the chair they were sitting in. But that would be too simple. If I did that, Elena and Brielle would pivot. They'd play the victims. They'd say I was having an episode. No, I needed the Sterlings to see the fraud in a way that couldn't be explained away. I waited until the Sterlings went to tour the rooftop garden. Brielle and Elena stayed behind, their faces instantly dropping the royal act. "We need a fake," Brielle hissed at Mom. "We need someone to play Cassia for the rehearsal dinner. Find an actress. Someone who looks enough like that boring cow to pass in dim lighting." "We can't, Brielle," Elena whispered, looking worried. "Marcus is here. He knows what Cassia looks like. He's been suspicious all day." "Then we fire Marcus," Brielle snapped. "I'm the power of attorney here. I'll sign the papers myself." I slipped out of the room before they could see me. I headed straight back to Marcus's office. He was looking at a series of wire transfer requests that had just hit his inbox, requests for nearly $2 million, all with my signature. "They're going for the kill, Marcus," I said, pulling off the mask. "They're trying to empty the trust's liquid assets before the wedding. What do you want to do, Cassia? I can call the police right now." "No," I said, looking at the security feed as Brielle primped in front of a $50,000 mirror. "They want a Cassia Thorne at the rehearsal dinner. They're going to get one. But first, I want you to leak a little information to Julian's father. Tell him the Thorne Trust is being audited for massive fraud. Tell him the Singapore relative is actually under investigation by the FBI." The third twist, I wasn't just defending my money. I realized that the Sterlings weren't just old money. Julian's father, Alistair, was the head of the very bank that held the Thorne Trust's accounts. If he thought the trust was fraudulent, he wouldn't just cancel the wedding. He'd freeze the assets himself. I was going to let my mother and sister walk right into a trap where the Sterlings would be the ones to pull the trigger. "And Marcus," I added, "call my lawyer. I want to add a new clause to the Aurelians' force majeure policy, one that specifically covers family betrayal." As I left the building, I saw Brielle and Julian laughing on the balcony. She looked so happy, so secure in her lie. She didn't realize that the very air she was breathing inside that building was something I permitted. And I was about to turn off the oxygen. The night of the rehearsal dinner, the Aurelian Plaza was draped in silk and bathed in the soft, deceptive glow of 1,000 candles. It was supposed to be the crowning achievement of Brielle's social ascent. To me, it was a stage for the final act of a long overdue tragedy. I wasn't in a server's uniform tonight. I was in a back room, watching the security feeds on a wall of monitors. I saw my mother, Elena, dressed in a gown that cost more than my first car, paid for, no doubt, by a forged check from my account. She was fluttering around Beatrice Sterling like a moth to a flame, desperate for the warmth of status. And then I saw her, the actress. She was a woman named Sienna, a local theater performer who bore a striking, if slightly sharper, resemblance to me. She was dressed in a conservative, mousy gray dress, exactly how Brielle would have described my depressing style. She was wearing glasses and looked perpetually nervous. It was a perfect caricature of the person Brielle wanted me to be. "She's good," Marcus whispered, standing beside me. "She's been briefed. She knows to stay in the shadows, speak only when spoken to, and agree with everything your mother says." "She's a puppet," I said, my eyes fixed on Brielle, who was glowing in a white cocktail dress. "But she's about to lose her strings." The dinner was held in the intimate solarium, a glass-walled room that looked out over the city lights. I watched through the high-definition cameras as the Sterlings sat down. Alistair Sterling looked bothered. My leak about the FBI audit had clearly reached his ears, and he spent the first 20 minutes of the meal checking his phone with a dark scowl. "Cassia, dear," Alistair said suddenly, looking directly at the actress, Sienna. "I was looking over the Thorne Trust's recent filings. There seems to be a significant discrepancy in the liquidity reports. Nearly $2 million was moved into a shell account yesterday. Since you're the trustee, I'm sure you can explain why." Sienna, the actress, froze. She looked toward my mother, her eyes wide with panic. This wasn't in the script. "Oh, Alistair," Elena chimed in, her voice forced and high-pitched. "Cassia is so shy about her philanthropy, she's donated that to the Swiss clinic. For the children. Right, Cassia?" Sienna nodded vigorously, her voice a mere whisper. "Yes, the children, it's for their future." Alistair narrowed his eyes. "A $2 million donation from a trust that is currently under audit? That's not philanthropy, Elena, that's money laundering. Julian, have you seen these reports?" Julian, the handsome but dim heir, looked confused. "Dad, it's a rehearsal dinner. Can't we talk about banking on Monday?" "We'll talk about it now," Alistair snapped. "Because if this trust is compromised, this marriage is a liability, not an asset." Brielle's face went from pale to ghostly. She realized the Sterlings didn't love her, they loved the Thorne Trust. They loved the Aurelian Plaza. And the moment the money looked dirty, she was nothing but a girl from a mid-sized house with a penchant for expensive robes. "Alistair, I assure you," Brielle said, her voice trembling, "everything is perfectly legal. Cassia handles everything. She's very gifted with numbers." It was time. I walked out of the security room. I didn't run. I moved with the steady, rhythmic gait of a woman who knew exactly where every brick in this building was laid. I bypassed the servers and walked straight to the glass doors of the solarium. I pushed them open. The sound of the heavy glass hinges was like a gunshot in the silent room. Every head turned. There were now 2 Cassias in the room. Sienna, the actress, stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her wine glass. Elena gasped, her hand flying to her throat as if to check if her stolen pearls were still there. Brielle looked like she was about to faint. "I'm sorry I'm late," I said, my voice projecting clearly through the room, the same voice that had commanded boardroom meetings for years. The Swiss clinic had a bit of a security breach. I had to handle it personally. I walked to the head of the table, right between Alastair Sterling and my mother. "Who is this?" Beatrice Sterling asked, her voice sharp with confusion. "Brielle, why are there 2 of them? This is an intruder," Brielle screamed, finally finding her voice. "Security, Marcus, get her out of here. This is the stalker I told you about. This is the girl who thinks she's me." I looked at Alastair Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, you're a banker. You deal in cold, hard facts. You asked about the $2 million discrepancy. I'm the one who can give you the account numbers, because I'm the only one who actually has the biometric clearance to move that money." I pulled a tablet from my blazer and slid it across the table to him. It showed a live feed of the Thorne Trust's master ledger. It also showed a log of the forged signatures, digital overlays that matched my mother's handwriting, not mine. "Wait," Alastair said, his eyes scanning the data. "If you're Cassia." "Then who is she?" He pointed at the terrified actress. "She's a very talented performer," I said, smiling at Sienna. "You can go now, Sienna. Your check is waiting at the front desk. And don't worry, I won't be suing you for impersonation. I'm saving my legal energy for the people who hired you." Sienna didn't wait for a second invitation. She bolted from the room. "Cassia, stop this," Elena hissed, reaching for my arm. "You're ruining everything. Think of your sister's happiness." "I am thinking of it, Mom," I said, pulling away. "I'm thinking about how happy she'll be in a world where she doesn't have to lie anymore. Because tonight, the Thorne Trust is being dissolved, and the Aurelian Plaza is being closed for maintenance." The fourth twist, I hadn't just come to expose the fraud. I had come with a gift. "Julian," I said, looking at the groom-to-be, "my sister told you she was the heir to the Thorne fortune. She isn't. According to my father's will, if Brielle ever attempted to defraud the estate or misrepresent the family name to secure a marriage, her entire stipend is forfeited to the Thorne Foundation for the Homeless. As of 5 minutes ago, Brielle is officially penniless." I turned to Alastair. "And as for the Sterling Bank, I'm moving the entire trust, the remaining $40 million, to a rival firm. Your bank's failure to flag the forged signatures on those $2 million transfers is a gross negligence of fiduciary duty. My lawyers will be in touch about the damages." The room was in total chaos. Alastair was shouting at Julian. Beatrice was looking at Brielle as if she were a cockroach. And Brielle, she was looking at me with a hatred so pure it could have melted the crystal on the table. "You think you've won?" Brielle screamed, grabbing a knife from the table. "You think you can just take my life away?" "I'm not taking your life, Brielle," I said, stepping back as security finally arrived, my security. "I'm just taking back my name. You and Mom have 24 hours to vacate the house. It's owned by the trust and the new tenants arrive on Monday." "Who?" Elena sobbed. "Who are you giving our home to?" "A foster family," I said. "People who actually know how to love each other without a price tag." As the Sterling family marched out in a storm of insults and broken contracts, leaving Brielle and Elena alone in the middle of a darkened ballroom, I felt a weight lift that I'd been carrying for 10 years. The morning of the wedding was silent. Usually, the Aurelian Plaza would be a hive of activity, florists rushing with lilies, the scent of expensive perfume in the air, the distant tune of a string quartet. But today, the grand foyer was as cold as a mausoleum. I stood on the mezzanine, looking down at the empty Sela's room. The thousands of white roses Brielle had ordered were already wilting in their boxes. I had forbidden the staff from putting them in water. The Sterlings had officially broken the engagement via a 3-sentence press release at 6:00 a.m. In the world of high finance, a bride who is a fraud is worse than a bride who is a murderer. I heard the heavy brass doors at the entrance creak open. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The sharp, frantic click of heels on marble echoed through the emptiness. "Cassia!" Brielle's voice was a ragged scream. "Cassia, come down here and face me." I walked down the grand staircase, my heels clicking in a slow, rhythmic counterpoint to her hysteria. Brielle was wearing her $20,000 wedding gown. She must have put it on in the back of the car. It was stained at the hem, her veil trailing behind her like a tattered ghost. Behind her stood my mother, Elena, looking like she had aged 20 years overnight. The doors were locked, Cassia, Elena whimpered. The guards wouldn't let us in. We had to use the service entrance. The service entrance is for people who work for a living, Mom, I said, stopping on the final step, which, as of today, includes both of you. Brielle lunged at me, but the sheer weight of her silk train held her back. She looked ridiculous, a queen of nothing in a palace that didn't want her. You ruined it. The Sterlings won't take my calls. Julian blocked me. They're threatening to sue us for the reputational damage of the bank fraud. They aren't just threatening, Brielle, I said, handing her a manila envelope. Those are the papers for the civil suit. And those underneath? Those are the criminal indictments for identity theft and wire fraud. The DA was very interested in those notarized letters Mom signed with my name. Elena sank onto a velvet bench, burying her face in her hands. We just wanted you to have a good life, Brielle. I did it for you. You did it for yourself, Mom, I countered. You wanted the Sterling name so you could stop pretending to be wealthy and actually be it. You were willing to sacrifice your eldest daughter's sanity and freedom to get it. The final twist of the mystery revealed itself then. I pulled a small, digital recorder from my pocket, the one I'd hidden under the table during the rehearsal dinner. I found something else while I was auditing the accounts, Mom, I said. A series of payments made 10 years ago, right after Dad died. Payments to a private investigator to follow me. You didn't just find out about the Thorne Trust recently. You knew about it the day the will was read. I played the recording. It wasn't from the dinner. It was a file I'd recovered from Elena's old laptop. If Cassia finds out she owns the holdings, we'll never see a dime, Elena's recorded voice whispered. We have to keep her small, keep her convinced she's nothing. If she stays a consultant and we manage the POA, we can bleed the trust dry before she ever turns 25. Brielle looked at our mother, her eyes wide. Even the golden child didn't know the depth of the rot. You knew she was the owner the whole time. You let me treat her like a servant when she was the one paying for my life. I did it to keep us together, Elena wailed. No, I said. You did it to keep me under your thumb, but you forgot that Dad knew you better than you knew yourself. He didn't just leave me the money, he left me a letter. It was triggered to be delivered to me only if the trust was ever flagged for fraud. I received it yesterday. I pulled out a yellowed piece of stationery, my father's handwriting. Cassia, the letter read. If you are reading this, your mother and sister have tried to take what is yours. Don't be angry, be decisive. The Aurelian has a basement vault, code 714, your birthday. Inside is the original, unedited will. Use it to end the charade. The will you've been using is a forgery, Mom, I said. The real one doesn't just give me the commercial holdings. It gives me the house, the cars, and the very ground you're standing on. You aren't just penniless, you're homeless. The silence that followed was absolute. The weight of the truth finally crushed the last of Brielle's vanity. She looked down at her white dress, then at me. What now? She asked, her voice small. Are you going to send us to jail? The law will decide that, Brielle, I said. I've turned over all the evidence to the DA. But because I'm a dangerous madwoman, as you told the Sterlings, I've decided to be merciful. I won't press charges on the identity theft if you sign over the remaining life insurance policies and move into the studio apartment I've rented for you in the industrial district. You'll have a job waiting for you cleaning the floors here at the Aurelian. It's time you learned what the help actually goes through. Elena looked up horrified. Cleaning? Cassia, please. It's more than you gave me, I said, turning my back on them. Marcus, show them to the service exit and take the dress. It's technically property of the Thorne Trust now. I'll be donating the fabric to a local theater group. I walked back up the stairs as my mother and sister were escorted out of the grand ballroom, their cries echoing until the heavy brass doors slammed shut. I stood in the center of the Sela's room, the morning sun finally hitting the marble. I was alone, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a thorn. Family isn't always about who shares your blood, it's about who deserves your trust. Cassia Thorne spent a decade being erased by the people she loved, but she learned that the best way to find yourself is to burn down the lies that hide you. If you were moved by the wedding ban and the ultimate pro-revenge against a toxic family, subscribe to Hidden Secrets. We tell the stories of the underdogs who turn the tables and the secrets that refuse to stay buried. Hit the notification bell, comment, sister, if you've ever dealt with a golden child, and remember, never ban the person who owns the door.